Hey there guys, gals, and non-binary pals. So last video we talked about Haro, which led us down a bit of a rabbit hole tangent thing, all about how crits work inside of Warframe. Some of you actually ended up showing up in my Twitch chat looking for more info on how crits actually work in this game, so let's take a deep dive. If at the end of the video you have any more questions about the big damage numbers that make us have a little bit more serotonin in our lives, feel free to drop a comment down below or drop by my Twitch chat at twitch.tv/xenosfire and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. As always, a bit of a disclaimer. This is meant to be a bit more of a beginner-ish video on the topic of crits, as crits in Warframe isn't as simple as big percent number make big damage number go burr. But if you're more of a veteran player out there, you might learn something new, or might have something to add to what I'm saying, so stick around and drop your wisdom down below in the comments section. Right, so what exactly is a crit? Crits are an attack that has a percentile chance to increase your damage significantly. The chance for this increase is based on your weapon's crit chance percentage, shown here in your weapon arsenal menu, which is affected by a bunch of different variables. Right below the critical chance, you can see the critical modifier. This tells you how much that critical hit increases your base damage by when you do crit. Thus, to put it simply, with the Magnus you have a 22% chance for your normal attack to become a crit, and your damage will increase by 2 times when that happens. Okay, so that's a wrap. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Now you've probably noticed that the video goes on for longer than this, so let's actually get into the nitty-gritty of crits. Every weapon, be it ranged or melee, has a chance to do exponentially more damage, which is dictated by your crit chance. The percentage chance for your attacks to become a crit is based on a few different things, but the thing you'll notice right away here in the armory is that it's based on mods that are equipped to your weapon. These increases are called relative increases to your crit, meaning it's base crit chance multiplied by the amount shown on the mod. The other kind is absolute base critical chance increase, which we'll go over in a little bit. So your weapon's base crit chance is affected by mods, which there's a number of them for each weapon slot and kind of weapon. Each slot and weapon type has a bit of a variation to select from. Some mods just give you a straight up crit chance with no drawbacks, like Pistol Gambit. Some have a condition to increase your critical chance, like Hydraulic Crosshairs, which needs both a headshot and for you to be aiming down your weapon to give you that crit bonus. And some have some kind of drawback in addition to giving you a massive increase to your crit chance, like Creeping Bullseye. You can add on more than one type of critical increasing mod. So how does that affect the crit rate increase? Well, here's the basic formula. Don't worry, you don't need to remember this. The game does it automatically for you. This is just for your understanding and makes it easier to explain how all of this works for you visual learners out there like me. There's only 2 things you need to know with this formula: the weapon's base crits and the mod's percentage increases. The mod's crit chance increases are all added together and then multiplied by the base critical chance. This final number is what you see in the armory. A quick note here is that this number in the armory doesn't show any conditional increases like the aforementioned Hydraulic Crosshairs. Now let's go back to this absolute crit chance that I briefly mentioned. These are usually special buffs that are outside of your mods and weapons, like Arcane's or Warframe's abilities such as Haro's Covenant. This is added directly on top of your weapon's crit chance rather than being put into the formula that we talked about earlier. Thus, if we take the crit chance that we had before and add on Haro's Covenant, for instance, at max potential, we now have this critical chance, and the formula looks like this. As you can see, it does what's on the weapon first and then adds on that extra crit chance directly, increasing it by 200% rather than working like a mod where it's multiplied by the base critical chance. You all might now be saying, well, wait a second, that's over 100%. How's that possible? Well, there's not just one type of crit in Warframe. There's the basic crits, known as yellow crits, and super awesome crits, which, to put simply, are crits critting, or even crits that have critted again. Okay, let's break it down. So from 0 to 100% crit chance, these are your yellow crits, the basic ones, with not a whole lot to go over. From there, you have orange crits that happen once you get above 100% crit chance, specifically the 100 to 200% crit chance range. On top of that, we have red crits, which happen from the 200 to 300% critical chance bracket. And then once we are above 300% critical chance, we get guaranteed red crits and even more damage for each bracket of 100% we go up by. But just in case, let's clear something up here. If you have, say, a 234% crit chance, all of your attacks will be guaranteed to be an orange crit, with 34% of them being red crits instead. Back to the crits. For every 100% critical chance that you go up by, you increase the amount of damage that you do by quite a significant amount. The game calls each of these 100% critical chance brackets tiers, so for this explanation we'll need to start calling them tiers rather than by the more common color coordinated system that we've been using up until now. Just to keep it simple for you, yellow crits are tier 1 because they happen when you have a crit chance of 0 to 100%. Orange is tier 2 as it's above 100%, red is tier 3 as it's above 200%, and so on and so forth. For each tier we go up by, we also see an increase in Critical Multiplier, which is how we see such an increase in damage. Okay, we've got to loop back to how Critical Modifier works before we can keep going from here. Critical Modifier is basically, when I crit, how much more damage do I deal in a number. So for instance, with the Magnus, we see the base Critical Modifier is 2. This is then increased by our mods on the weapon. Like Critical Chance, each slot and weapon type has its own kind of mod to increase the Critical Modifier. These are then multiplied by the Critical Modifier, which in formula form looks like this. Remember this formula for like 1 minute because it's going to be important for this next part. When you crit, we make a quick change to this formula by adding the tier number into it. So let's say we got a tier 3 crit, which as you'll recall is a critical chance of 200 to 300%. The game adds in your tier number, 3 in this case, here into the formula, which makes it look like this now. Now if we actually do the math here, we now see that the crit modifier is actually 7.6 with a tier 3 crit instead of 3.2 with a tier 1 crit. If we transfer over this weapon's damage number, we now see it's hitting for roughly 745 with a tier 3 crit instead of 314 with a tier 1 crit, and this is with no damage mods on the weapon. Now the tiers can actually go above tier 3, but anything 3 and above is visually shown in the game as just a red crit, but we'll still change the modifier even though there's no visual changes. Trust me, you'll know when it's a tier above, as the crit damage will be significantly higher than what you may be expecting. The final thing that we need to talk about here is headshots, which will also increase the amount of damage you deal with a critical hit. It's actually really simple. It's usually just an extra 2 times crit modifier, but it's put right at the start of the formula, which now makes it look like this. Some weapons have a different headshot modifier, so sometimes it'll be even more damage and even more rewarding when you do crit. And just for reference, a headshot with the Magnus with its base damage and only a target cracker and a tier 3 crit, we now have a whopping 15.2 modifier to our crit. This brings our damage from 314 with a basic tier 1 crit to 1,489, a nearly 475% increase over the tier 1 crit, which is pretty insane, right? Well, that's that. Now you have over-the-top knowledge of how our tiny little pistol dishes out insane damage. What do you think? Did you learn something new? Did I mess up anything? Leave a comment down below if either of those are the case, or if you have any other questions. Like I said, I stream over at twitch.tv/Xenosfire, so feel free to drop by if you have any other questions. I'm happy to answer any that you may have, even when I'm playing a different game. And with that, I hope you all have an awesome day, keep safe, and see y'all soon.